Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of Intuitive Angling, and much appreciated you guys spending some of your day with me and checking out the video. This is going to be one of those information-packed videos that's really going to help you guys down the road catch a bunch of fish, because we're going to be talking about the difference between using a lure that has rattles in it and a silent lure, a lure that does not have rattles in it. This can make all the difference in the world at times based upon the mood and the personality of the bass. So I'm going to go over today, I'm going to talk about, some of the lures, the key lures that offer this feature, and then sort of describe to you guys the scenario that they work the best in, because it can make a huge difference. I mean, I've seen it over and over again, so we'll get into that in today's episode. And also, guys, if you're interested in buying some baits that have rattles or not rattles, I will put my Tackle Warehouse link in the description of this video. If you guys can use and bookmark that link to buy your baits there, that's a really good way to support the channel. Every time you buy something, if you use that link, the channel gets a small percentage of a commission of anything you buy there. It's not much, but it adds up if everybody does it. So really appreciate the guys that are supporting that. Big thank you from me and my family. Okay, this is something this has been around a long time. I mean, lures have had rattles and not rattles for a long time. Some of the earlier baits, it's like you didn't have a lot of baits that had rattles in them, like in the 60s and 70s, but they started to emerge a little bit in the 80s. Companies would add rattles. And now I'm going to guess that the majority of hard baits, like your crankbaits and your jerk baits and even some of your top waters, they do have some type of rattle, or they've got some type of an internal balancing system that actually creates noise too. Because a lot of the internal balancer systems, like for example, the ones Megabass use, you actually have a tungsten ball bearing that goes back and forth throughout the lure, and that is designed to balance the lure and help it cast better, but it also creates some noise. And then you got, silent options too. So let's talk a little bit about when you want to use both, when they work a little bit better than anything else. First of all, I want to talk about let's talk about the rattling baits, then we'll talk about the silent baits. The rattling baits, for the most part, are going to be better on your fish that are a little bit more aggressive, the fish that are not quite as heavily pressured, and sometimes under conditions that have low light or off-colored water. So say, for example, if you're fishing, now this isn't the case all the time, because I'm going to talk about the exceptions to the rule here in a second too, but for example, if you have some muddy water, a lot of times the rattle can help the bass locate that lure in the dirty water visibility of under a foot or so. And then sometimes, like at night, or it's a rainy day, say it's a rainy, windy, cloudy day where there's a lot of motion on the surface, sometimes that can attract them. If the weather conditions and the weather patterns are conducive, along with the water temperatures, to make bass actively, aggressively feeding, a lot of times this is sort of like a prefrontal deal, or maybe even, a rainy day, windy, warm, those conditions that really get the bass biting pretty good. A lot of times the rattle will attract more and bigger fish. And then also sometimes the rattle is going to work to trigger a reaction strike. So say, for example, you have some bass that are not actively feeding, they're dormant. A lot of times a rattle used in correlation with like a fast stop and go retrieve on a crankbait or a jerkbait or anything like that, that can trigger a reaction strike. Just the obnoxious noise and the speed of the bait can get those bass just really pissed, where they come out and hammer it too. And then on a category like a topwater lure, sometimes a rattle is going to draw those fish from a long distance. So if you got a situation where you're fishing a topwater where it's like clear water situation, and maybe the wind's blowing, like there's a good chop on the water, sometimes the wave action and the chop on that water, a rattle really helps to get the bass to find that. They can hear it as well as see the commotion a little bit. So that's the situations there. Now, the situations where you want to use a silent lure, and a lot of different companies make them, like Megabass makes a silent Vision 110 as well as one that has rattles in it. A lot of different, most companies have an option between silent or not silent. The times that you want to use a silent lure are as follows here. Number one, I have found that a silent lure works a lot better under tough fishing conditions, especially when you have a post-frontal condition with not much wind. Let's say, for example, had this front blow through. It's been raining and blowing for a couple days. Front goes through, bluebird's off, wind dies down, you know, it's bright, light intensity is really high. A lot of times that silent bait will catch a lot more fish. And I've seen this work over and over again. So let's say, for example, I've been catching them on a jerk bait that has rattles in it, and it's been windy and cloudy. And then I keep fishing that rattle and jerk bait the next day when the front rolls through, and all the fish do is follow it. They track it, they look it, they nip at it. A lot of times going to that silent jerk bait can actually get those fish to actually commit to that bait and attack that bait. So that's the first one. The second is heavy fishing pressure. If you're on a heavily fished body of water, a lot of times those bass are very conditioned to noise, because most lures that you buy at a lot of big retail chains across the country have rattles in them. So the bass get conditioned to that. Bass get conditioned to noise and vibration. And so a silent bait on a heavily fished body of water can be, you know, pretty effective under those conditions. Clear water is another situation. I prefer a silent bait in clear water if I can get by with it, unless it's windy. So say, for example, if there's no wind out and clear water, I'm going to catch a lot more fish on a topwater lure that does not have a rattle in it. Again, if it's windy, you know, rattles sometimes can help. Clear water, flat water, you know, it's going to be really good for topwater to not have a rattle in it. Same with the jerk bait. I like to fish that Mega Bass Silent 110 a lot of times. If, you know, it's a clear water situation or there's not much wind and the fish are real spooky, that can make a big difference too. But don't just relegate it to clear water, because I also have seen in stained water, like water visibility of under 2 foot, that sometimes they want a silent crankbait, especially in warmer water months. If you're fishing like in the summertime of the year, say you're doing some shallow cranking with a square bill or something like that, I've seen a lot of times where that silent bait will catch fish in dirtier water if the water's shallow, because a lot of times those bass that are in real shallow water, they're not comfortable being that shallow. They're very wary and they're very spooky. And if you throw a crankbait in that shallow water of less than 3 feet that's making this lot of rattling and noise, they don't want anything to do with it. But if you can have a silent crankbait come through there that is a lot more, you know, natural and subtle, a lot of times they'll hammer it with that. Overall, though, the 3 main categories you need to remember, guys, is use the silent in heavily fished waters, clear water, post-frontal, use the rattles, low light condition when the fish are aggressive, that type of stuff. And it really makes a huge difference sometimes. So anyway, hope it helps out. We'll talk later.